Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast. It's the Sunday edition of our podcast, which means we are going back over the weekend's action in England. Domestic action, I should stress. I am your host, Kris, and tonight I've got a threesome with me. Oh yes, I have. I've got Ross. Good evening, Ross.
Good evening.
I've got Josh. Good evening, Josh.
Good evening, Kris.
And a warm welcome back for the second time. I've got James Truscott. Evening, James.
Yeah, hello there.
Hello. Right, gentlemen, lots to get through, as we say, every single week. It's been a busy week in the Premier League and the Championship in particular, so let's get straight to it. We're going to sort of whip through the title race first of all, but as we did a lot on it last week, Premier League-wise, we're not going to spend as much time on it, but it's all changed. Once again, in the top, I suppose you've got to call it the top five, realistically, maybe top six. But let's start with the action this afternoon and kind of work our way backwards. Who shall I pick on? Let's pick on Josh. Josh, Chelsea winning 2-0 against Hull City in the final game of the weekend. What do you think this game will be sort of, not remembered for, but we should obviously talk about the injury, which we'll come on to in a second, but is this going to be remembered for how Hull were kind of actually quite good in long spells, or the fact that Chelsea broke them down irrespective of how organised Hull were under their new coach, who's impressing a few, I think?
Yeah, I think for a manager who has been labelled as not having enough experience in the Premier League, Conte's doing very well with Chelsea. They go marching on. Diego Costa has infamously returned from maybe a very quick trip back from China to break down Hull and get that first goal in the 7th minute of injury time, coming from 7 minutes for that injury to Ryan Mason, who is in a critical condition now. So thoughts go out to him at this time. Hull have looked very impressive under their new manager. I think just 2-0 to Chelsea. I don't think they'd expect to win a game like that, but the results they've put together since then, beating Bournemouth was probably one of the big ones, because that's the kind of game they need to win at this point in the season. Beat the teams around you.
It's another clean sheet for Conte's men as well. I think that will please him as much as anything else. Ross, what did you? Obviously, we should talk about the injury, and there's not a lot more we could say other than the fact that there was a clash of heads between Ryan Mason and Gary Cahill. Long stoppage time was given, and he was taken to hospital. We hear tonight, Sunday night time recording, that he has a fractured skull and potentially bleeding on the brain as well, which obviously is quite distressing to talk about, but. What sort of your thoughts on football injuries as a whole? Because you don't get this kind of injury very often. I think Peter Cech was the obvious one that comes to mind. But is it kind of amazing that we don't have more of these injuries, or do you think it is just one of those unfortunate things in sport where it does happen from time to time?
Yeah, it's just, unfortunately, it is one of those things. I think John Hartson was another famous example of it as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, good shout.
Yeah. Obviously, it's never nice to see. I remember when I can't think of his name now, but the Bolton lad had the heart attack on the field.
Fabrice Muamba.
I remember seeing that live. I was watching the game this afternoon because I'm really interested to see how Marco Silva does at Hull. And I saw the clash of heads. I didn't think it was that bad. You see plenty of players clash heads during a football match, but obviously the news that's come out now is amazing. Really, it's such a huge surprise when you see that clash of heads. You don't think it's caused that much damage, but to now have that report, it's a very grounding and humbling moment to realise that these kind of incidents do happen in football still. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things. Is the risk you take when you go in for any header and any 50-50, but no one likes to see it happen. And like I say, it's a very grounding moment, I think, for everyone to hear the news that's coming out tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, but what do you think about Gary Cahill, though, in this scenario? Because he played on, but considering the critical condition that Ryan Mason found himself in after the accident, surely Gary Cahill had some form of injury afterwards, but Chelsea had used up all their substitutions. So what should be done then? I mean, should there be a free substitution given to Chelsea? Because to force a player to continue who perhaps has mild concussion is something that football really needs to deal with, and it keeps on getting criticised for it, and it's an issue it keeps on ignoring, concussion.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's a really. I mean, I watch a lot of UFC, and obviously it's obviously a very different sport, but the severity that they, the seriousness they take, and obviously boxing, you've seen with the lad who Chris Eubank Jr. knocked out, is a very serious issue, and I personally don't think there's anywhere near enough medical training or professional head trauma people in the game. I really don't. And you've seen a lot going on in the NFL as well. I think there's been a lot of cases where they're taking people to court over serious injuries. I think you're absolutely right. And like Ross says, it is one of those things. It does happen, but are we doing enough to give the sort of care and attention to these players? Because I think we'd all agree Gary Cahill will be on the side next week for Chelsea. And how do we know if he goes home tonight and just has a bit of a headache? Does he just take some tablets and carry on, or does he get the professional care that he should get the next couple of days? It's one that will run. I think it is definitely one that will run. But we should talk about Hull, and James, I'll give you the opportunity to speak about Hull. Ross was keen to see how Marco Silva got on. I've seen a fair amount of him when he was at Olympiacos in particular. He's always been a coach that impresses me. What's your sort of thoughts on Hull? Do you think his appointment does change their chances of staying up? Because they do look a lot more organised, at least now. It's maybe the goals they're going to struggle with at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think when Marco Silva first came in, obviously a lot of people were criticising the appointment. I think that's caused largely a lot of neutrals, a lot of fans of other teams to be rooting for Hull, just so the doubters are proved wrong. I mean, Marco Silva went with a 3-4-3 today. So that was quite an attacking formation, and I think he's quite an attacking coach. People have compared him to Mourinho, but I think that's just due to the friendship between them, not in terms of style. And so I think people were quite surprised by the way in which Hull played today. They nearly matched Chelsea in terms of possession and in terms of opportunities too. But if they had someone to take those chances, they perhaps would have done better. I think had Abel Hernandez playing up front in the centre of that front three. And from what I've seen a couple seasons ago and this season, I don't think he has enough to cut it in the Premier League. In Serie B in the Championship, he's performed well, but in a top tier league, I think he's just devoid of a bit of quality on the ball. He has pace, but I think striker's definitely a position he'll need to strengthen in, as well as in midfield, because Jake Livermore's on the way out and Ryan Mason now injured. But I think that it's positive signs for Hull, and any team with a performance like that against Chelsea would be in any other team in the table. But I think Chelsea are, imperious and far ahead of any other team in the league at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be Hull are going to have to look at those games, the home games in particular, against the sort of sides in and around them that really going to have to look at pick up points. And if they do get a sort of an away win or even a home win against the big side, they're going to see that as a potential bonus. And I agree on Abel Hernandez. Saw a lot of him at Palermo. He's got all the attributes, but ultimately he's one of those that will get you 7 or 8 a season, not 10 or 15. I think that's probably the worry for Hull. The one player I was quite impressed with it was Evandro. I think we mentioned on this podcast last week, came from Porto. I think he looks a tidy little playmaker. I think he could be very handy, particularly if they lose Snodgrass, which seems like they might.
Some of the Porto fans were a bit mocking of the transfer on social media, Evandro joining Hull City, but I agree with you there. I think for the money they spent on him, only for 4 million or so, and he's played under Marco Silva twice, I think, under at Estoril and Porto.
Yep.
And Estoril got quite a few goals for him from midfield. So I think it's an astute addition. It's one of those that, even if it doesn't go too well, the outlay's so cheap that it's not really something that'll make too much of a dent.
Absolutely, and if the manager knows the player, sometimes he can get the best out of him moving forward. So yeah, we want to keep a keen eye on. But Ross, we mentioned there Hull looking to pick up points against the sides in and around them, and anything against the top clubs is a bonus. That leads us nicely on to Swansea. Be honest with me, did you see any chance in hell that they could leave Anfield with 3 points? Because I tweeted that I actually watched, as you know, Fulham QPR, because I had no interest in this game because I thought it would just be a very comfortable win for Liverpool. Swansea coming out with a 3-2 victory, and particularly having been pegged back from 2-0 to 2-2, I thought, yeah, here it comes, Liverpool 3-2, and they went and won it. Why? What do you have to say about this game?
I'm not going to say I predicted Swansea getting anything from it, because I didn't. At the same time, Liverpool have been on a poor run. I think they've only won one in their last 6 or one in their last 5 before this weekend's game, which was the 1-0 against Plymouth in the FA Cup, which even then was a bit scrappy with all the changes they made. There was an opportunity for Swansea because Liverpool do look a bit leggy. They don't look like the same outfit they did about a month ago. So there was an opportunity for them. At the same time, I didn't expect Swansea to go and win this, especially. From what I saw of the game and from what I read on social media, it seemed like Llorente was causing all kinds of problems, especially against Dejan Lovren, who just couldn't seem to match him in the air. And then obviously Llorente goes and gets 2 goals. The 2 goals that Liverpool go and score, both very good finishes from a very good striker in Firmino. And then the third goal from Sigurdsson, it almost looks like it catches Liverpool cold. They don't really know what to do after that. It does kind of feel to me that Liverpool are suffering not just from perhaps a bit of fatigue, but also just kind of confidence, mainly. It just seems like heads are dropping a little bit. As soon as a goal goes in, or certain goals go in, I should say, it's kind of like, oh, well, now what? It seems to be the impression I get. Maybe I'm being harsh on them, but it's certainly the impression I got, especially when I saw them in the Capital One Cup or the EFL Cup a couple of weeks ago against Southampton. They do just seem to be really off the pace, and I'm not sure if it's a confidence thing or a fitness thing or what it is, but they seem to be wobbling at the moment. And there was an opportunity for Swansea, but I certainly didn't see them winning it.
No, nor did I. And Josh, of Swansea, obviously, we have covered Liverpool, and as Ross quite rightly says, they're not particularly in form at the moment. But Swansea played some good stuff, and as I say, I touched on it briefly there. But from losing 2 goals, obviously at 2-0 up, you thought the logical thing is right, keep it tight for 10 minutes, and wouldn't you know it, they go and concede, straight away. And when Firmino made it 2-2. And by the way, wasn't criticised for celebrating an equaliser. For those of you who might have read a lot about Olivier Giroud's celebration at Bournemouth, had to throw that in there. But to get back to 2-2 and then to go again, and 2 big goals from Llorente and of course Gylfi Sigurdsson, who's being looked at by West Ham. Is this the platform Swansea need for potentially a run, not up the table, but out of that bottom 3 place?
Yeah, I think having that extra week off the back of the Swansea Arsenal game where they lost 4-0, I think this was a nice time for them to regroup, because they still looked like the Bob Bradley outfit where their heads would drop after conceding the first goal. And I think the 2 new debutants in the squad certainly helped them. It was Martin Olsen and Tom Carroll made their debuts today. And I think that extra bit of steel and resilience in the team has definitely helped them out in this game. That being said, Liverpool do look absolutely awful at the moment. Having said that, there were 2 interesting stats to come out of the game: that Liverpool were the first team to 50 goals scored in the league, and Swansea are the first to 50 goals conceded. So that tells you everything we need to know about what their team's problems are at the moment.
I think the weird thing with Swansea is that if you look at that squad, there isn't a huge amount of quality, but there's enough quality. If you get what I mean, you just think to yourself, like, why is something not clicking? And I kind of hope it works out for Paul Clement, just in the fact that he hasn't really had a fair crack of the whip. But then I look at the Bob Bradley situation, I think we're the same. So they're just so Jekyll and Hyde. But they've had 2 massive wins recently.
I think they've just been devoid of leaders. It sounds like a cliche, but at the back, defensively, I feel like that experience is something you need. And Ashley Williams going and not really being replaced. It's nothing against Mawson. He's clearly a good player, but someone young and not as experienced as Ashley Williams, I think they could have done with a bit of that at the back. Tom Carroll, though, I think I was really impressed. Really impressed by him. He's really inspired in midfield with some good dribbling for Swansea. I think he's playing in when you're at a bigger club like he was at Spurs, not really getting too many opportunities. When you're thrust into a side with big name players, you're not really feeling as if you can express yourself as a player. But in this Swansea squad, I feel like he's been given the license to do that, and that's why he's shone.
Yeah, he's definitely been given an opportunity. Anything else you wanted to add to that, Josh?
Yeah, I was just about to say that the team has definitely regressed since it came into the couple of seasons after the Premier League, the kind of Meet You years, where you've got the likes of Ashley Williams in that squad, and I think there's been a lot of changes with a lot of managers turning over there, and you still had those couple of leaders in the team when Leon Britton was in and around that squad a bit more often. Obviously Ashley Williams, if we said, and Gary Monk, the ex-captain, at the helm. I think there's a lot to be said for having your captain basically managing the team with then the club captain on the field of play as well.
Yeah, Ashley Williams certainly has been. I was going to say, I keep saying this phrase, been fingered. I don't mean it in the dirty way, listeners. I am sorry, but that's the phrase I'm going to go with. Being singled out, that's better, as the man that they're missing. So, yes, apologies for my filthy mind. But, yeah, he is missing, and Swansea, nevertheless, getting that result. Huge victory for them, even though it doesn't move them massively up the table. But at the moment, they are out of the bottom three, which is the only place they want to be at this present time. That moves us on then to other teams. We'll quickly just scoot over the other teams in this top six. Manchester United drawing with Stoke. Ross, the only thing really to mention about this game is the Wayne Rooney free kick, and of course he gets the record. Does this seal his move to China? I say that flippantly, but no, it's an incredible record, isn't it? And the one thing I have to mention is Bobby Charlton, who I think is now Lord Bobby Charlton, isn't he? I get this wrong. If you're seriously telling me that he's happy, look at his face every time they put the camera on him. I bet he's really narked that Rooney's taken that record off him. But nevertheless, whatever you think of him, it is quite an achievement, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know really what it is with English fans that we look at Wayne Rooney and just say, yeah, he's not as good as people think he is. The stats tell their own story. He's been fantastic for club and country. I think the thing that kind of hinders him is that he's never done it at a World Cup or a Euros except for his first tournament. But you know, you couldn't argue with just the sheer numbers of it, and he fully deserves it. I did hear some stories about maybe them getting him a statue outside of Manchester United, and it's that odd English fan reaction of, no, I'm not sure I'd be behind that, but at the same time, he's fully deserved it. So he's a strange one, is Wayne Rooney, but absolutely fantastic to see him break such an incredible record.
Yeah, quite the goal to break it with as well. So credit where credit is due. The Arsenal game, Josh, on the Sunday, 2-1 victory over Burnley. First half largely forgettable, other than sort of Arsenal being pretty much dominant. Obviously, getting the goal in front was you expected at that point when Shaka and Mustafi headed in 59th minute corner that you thought, okay, floodgates will probably open. They didn't. Granit Xhaka stupidly getting himself sent off. I know some people have got different views on this, but it's very similar to the Vardy one of recent times. For me, it is a red card. And then the last minute happened, or should I say the last 7 minutes happened. What did you make of that whole affair? Because Burnley will be gutted about the situation, but the argument, I guess you would say, is did they actually deserve to take anything from the game anyway?
Yeah, it was a mad few minutes. I remember the outcry that came when the board came up with 7 minutes on it, and how everybody ate their words by the end of the game from an Arsenal perspective, that 7 minutes of added time were given, because there wasn't a lot that went on in that second half to justify that amount of added time. I think 5 minutes was almost expected because there was the subs and the Xhaka sending off and an injury, but not a long period of time injury that you'd expect to see that 7 minutes. But you then got Coquelin, who'd come on to kind of shore things up at the back, giving away a silly penalty, which Andre Gray dispatched. But somewhere, luckily, Petr Cech getting close to a penalty for once. Getting his hand to it, but it wasn't enough to stop it going out, and then it's all changed, and Alexis, well, what can you say about the penalty when he goes up the other end? It's absolutely fantastic.
Massive
cool
balls.
as you like. Yeah, cool as you like, Panenka to seal the game, and he charges over to the much maligned banner that went up and had its debut this game of Alexis and his two dogs, Atom and Humber, and celebrated in front of it. So it sounds like he did enjoy the extra bit that the fans are doing for him, just to help him feel like part of the team and the main man.
Yeah, for a man who's apparently very unhappy and miserable at the moment, he didn't have to celebrate like a man who was exactly the opposite of that. And Ross, as you pointed out there, Burnley have had a little bit of an incident, or a little bit of luck of late with penalties. Am I right in saying? Was this against you last week? Was it the free kick that shouldn't have been given?
No, the point I've just made in our chat box is that Arsenal, on 3 occasions this season, have scored late winners in controversial fashion. And I remember saying, probably back in November kind of time on one of our podcasts, that I said that Arsenal were probably the luckiest team in this title race so far, because they just seem to be getting all of these kinds of breaks. Now, the penalty against Southampton shouldn't have been given, in my opinion. I know I could be seen as biased there, but I don't think it should have been given. For a start, there should have been a whistle blown for the fact that Fraser Forster went down with a head injury. Then against Burnley at Turf Moor, there was a bundled-in handball/offside goal from Laurent Koscielny to win them the game late on against Burnley. Once again against Burnley, there's a last-minute penalty that shouldn't have been given because Koscielny, once again, was offside when the foul is committed. It's a foul and it's a penalty, I understand that, but he was offside, so it shouldn't really have been given. For me, Arsenal was still getting extremely lucky, still getting some excellent breaks in this title race, and unfortunately it seems like the gap between them and Chelsea is just never shrinking at the moment. But Arsenal have been very, very lucky with some of these decisions.
Well, what I would be intrigued to see is there was one of these done last season. It was a Premier League table of luck. I say that in inverted commas, but basically someone had made a table just judging how many decisions had gone a certain way for each team and the validity of each decision. It was quite interesting to see which teams kind of came out on top. So, wonder if we could find one of those for this.
What's fun there, James, is I think we both remember that because Southampton were right near the bottom of it, weren't we?
Yeah, exactly. That's probably how it came across my timeline.
I'd be inclined to say this season it's probably a team in red at the top, but not from London.
Are you referring to a team that gets lots of offside goals, maybe?
Potentially,
yeah. And we have to be careful on this podcast because we've upset one of our loyal listeners. MH on our YouTube channel is... who I got a feeling is somebody Hernandez on Twitter. I'm sure. If it's not you, then I'm sorry. But yes, he'll think we're getting on the anti-United train again. We're not at all. But
again, you're implying you've done it before.
Well, we might have been a little bit sniffy about Paul Pogba last week, and I think we might have had a few things to say about their performances overall in the past few weeks. So
when they score a goal that isn't offside, I'll start giving them praise.
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? Ross and I were having a go at Mkhitaryan's offside.
But I think Man United have been brilliant in recent weeks. Just that offside one from Mkhitaryan, I don't understand why we're going mad over it when Giroud scores one that's even better because it's onside. So, that's my point.
But we all know Andy Carroll's goal was the best goal in living memory the week after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apparently.
Well, the best thing about that goal, just to add to it, was he was a doubt for this game because he's got whiplash.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that was quite amusing. I did see your message about that. That's beautifully segued actually, because that does give us a chance to move on to the next game. And I'll come back to the other title game in a second, but I did just want to transition quickly into Middlesbrough West Ham because I don't know about you guys. James, I'll start with you. I think Middlesbrough are very much in danger at the moment. They seem to be a side to me that are slipping steadily down the table. 3 defeats and 2 draws in the last 5. They've only got 20 points, which is a mammoth 4 points above the drop zone. Aitor Karanka, I think Ross told me about this. He's come out with a few tweets, or a few comments that were tweeted, I should say, after this game, where he was quite critical of the home fans' atmosphere. Do you think he's digging his own grave a little bit here? Because another couple of bad results, and he could be right back to where he was when he walked out of the club last year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Middlesbrough's poor performances have kind of gone slightly under the radar. And it was kind of unfair of Aitor Karanka to criticise the awful atmosphere created by fans when you're losing. I mean, obviously, you'd want the fans to get behind the team, but you can hardly blame them when I think Middlesbrough have been probably perhaps one of the most boring teams to watch in the league this season, considering their lack of goals, as well as they haven't really conceded much either. So when the fans are so deprived of entertainment, you can hardly blame them. I think they made the mistake in the summer, early on in the season, of making too many signings. I think that's what Burnley and Dyche have done really well, in that they've kept the nucleus of the team together and built on that solidity coming into the Premier League season. Whereas Middlesbrough, I think they made plenty of little signings, like cheap signings, rather than just a couple marquee signings to help them along. And even though they dominated possession against West Ham, West Ham just punished them for Middlesbrough's poor attacking prowess.
What do you make of them, Ross? Because you made this point about the thing about Karanka, and I think you brought it up to me about this atmosphere. What do you make of Borough? Because defensively they impress me at times, but then I'm being a bit hypocritical there because look at their last 5 results and they're conceding goals. So what is their best sort of asset? They brought Patrick Bamford back, haven't they, for potentially to add some goals, but they don't seem like a side that's ever going to score to me.
No, they've scored the least in the Premier League, but they've got the 6th best defence in the Premier League with 25 conceded, I think. I don't want to say that I called this, but I did say on the preview pod back in the summer that I thought Middlesbrough were going to be a team to get relegated this year, because I called it at the time a glass cannon, because they were that in the Championship. They would go all guns blazing and they'd catch you on the counter with some very quick tiki-taka kind of football between the front 4, but the defence was a problem, and it's what slowed them up in the title race in the end. In the Premier League, they seem to have switched. They've tried to shake it up, and it's just not in their DNA to be this defensive. It also hasn't helped that they've brought in Negredo, and they've had to change the way their front 4 work, because they were always at their best in the Championship when they just had 3 quick attacking players. Jordan Rhodes has been frozen out. They've now got Patrick Bamford back in. We're going to guess that Jordan Rhodes is going to be on his way back to the Championship sometime this window. For me, what I'd like to see is Middlesbrough going back to what brought them up, and to kind of take on this defensive solidarity, but to also go back to the counter-attacking unit they were in the Championship and try and catch teams cold, because I'm not sure they're getting the most out of their attacking talent at the moment. As for the atmosphere, the fans are completely free to boo or to cheer or to jeer or whatever they want to do. My biggest criticism, and the main reason I sent that quote to you, Kris, was the point that the tweet I sent you made, was that those fans stuck with Karanka last season when there was that debate over whether he'd stay or go. They called for him back. They wanted him back desperately. They stuck with him, even though there was some questions about whether Karanka really wanted to be there. They are well within their right to boo the team if they want to, or criticise the team if they want to. For me, I think Karanka is biting the hand that feeds him by calling out the fans, considering they were so loyal to him last season when they really didn't have to be.
Fair points made, and good result for West Ham nevertheless. We shouldn't gloss over them, and it's amazing what happens when you get a player who wants out and you don't put him in your side. It seems to have kicked on, and my prediction of Bilic being gone by the new year is clearly completely incorrect. I do get them wrong. It happens quite a lot. Ross will tell you that.
I'd have to say that free role that Lanzini's now been given has
works.
just shown how good a player he was and is. To go full hipster, I remember seeing him at River Plate, and he was a player there. I didn't know if he'd be able to make the transition to European football, because that's always a difficult thing to come from South America straight into European football, especially as high as the Premier League. They can struggle quite quickly, and they generally go to a middling league, your kind of Portugal, your Belgium, your Ukraine, before coming to one of the top 5 leagues. And he's just done absolutely superbly. And I don't think they need to buy a replacement for Paye. Let's put it that way. I think Lanzini is that man for them.
Shouts out to Caleri as well, who quote-unquote scored.
He's alive!
He's alive, he lives! We've created a monster. Are you giving him that goal, Ross?
I'm not. It's taken a massive deflection, but apparently it's his goal. So, shout out to him for finally getting one, quote-unquote, on target.
Well, if he gets that one, then taking Alex Iwobi's off him at Swansea last week is a travesty. So I'm just going to put that out there. But okay. Well, well done, Jonathan. You've got your goal. Now you can go back to playing somewhere where you can be actually half good. Didn't work out well. Josh, let me talk to you about Crystal Palace. So Mr. Pardew obviously went, and they brought in Sam Allardyce, who of course was the answer to everything, and was going to keep them up, and was going to make them defensively solid, etc., etc., etc. It didn't really work out yesterday. Bit of controversy about this goal. I don't think there should be any. I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen the incident involved with Bakary? Is it Bakary Sacco? No, it's not. It's Jeffrey Schlupp. That's the one. So for any of our listeners that haven't seen this, so he goes down with what looks like cramp inside the opposition penalty area. He's off the pitch. Clearly, it's not a head injury. It's not a wound. It's not a blood injury. He's clearly just got a bit of cramp. He then manoeuvres himself back onto the pitch, looking for the free kick to be given, whilst Everton bomb down the other end of the pitch. In goes Seamus Coleman, and he rattles in the goal. I have to say, at least 2 phases of play have gone by before this incident occurs as well. Is there any controversy in this goal, in your opinion? Because for me, it's a red herring, and Palace were just poor again.
Yeah, I think it is a red herring. If I remember back to the very small minutiae rules in football, if a player leaves the field of play, they're required to get the permission of the referee to come back on the field of play, if that's right.
I think that's right. Yeah, they have to be waved on, don't they?
Yeah, because I remember Kolo Touré and Gallas getting booked once for coming on the pitch late after the game had started, and I've been done for that before as well, even at Saturday League, for coming back on the pitch when I shouldn't do. But I think Tom Davies has come up again with another assist after his stellar performance against Man City, and Seamus Coleman doing the business. And I think what Koeman's got there at the moment, I believe he's stuck with the same back three with the wing backs. It's doing very well for him. I think Leighton Baines hasn't got the ability to bomb on from a four-man back four. And I think putting him into a system where he's got 3 defenders behind him has just helped them massively. And that, coupled with Gareth Barry in the side, there's a good mix of players there. And I did expect a higher scoring game, but perhaps the 1-0 is what you'd expect from Sam Allardyce putting a team out to make sure they're not on the receiving end of a thrashing.
Yeah, killed my coupon as well, because I thought there'd be at least 3 goals in that game, but shows what I know. I still find it amazing that Seamus Coleman is now 28. Seems to have been around for ages, but I've always thought of him as like 24, 25. That's really bizarre. But good win for Everton, who are quietly on a bit of a charge at the moment. 36 points now, 7th place. They're sniffing out Manchester United above them. So 3 straight wins as well for Ronald Koeman's men, as well as some new signings. And as you say, Tom Davies continues to impress. Anybody, Ross or James, anything you want to add on Crystal Palace, either of you, before we move on?
They're in major trouble. I would still expect them to stay up because of the Sam Allardyce factor, but I'm really surprised by how poorly they've done since he's gone in there. I think he's actually regressed them so far. So.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's, again, I'm going to go a cliche, but I know someone who works at Crystal Palace, and they told me and they told everyone to put money on them going down. I think they've got a bunch of prima donnas in that squad on big money compared to some of the other players in the team. And I don't think they're prepared to fight for the club. Lots of people on the way out there. Townsend, Benteke, Remy, Cabaye. Their heart isn't in it, in my opinion. And I'm not convinced Sam Allardyce is up for it either. I know usually he's good at saving teams from relegation and solidifying the team, but I think with this he's happy to take the money and run. I know he opted for this over China, but I'm not convinced.
It's got a history of taking money and running.
Yes, yeah. Or indeed sitting at a dinner table and taking money. Yeah, strange old situation down there at Palace. I think the one thing, just to throw in my 10 pence worth, the fans are clearly starting to turn down there. I think we got a glimpse of it a few weeks ago, didn't we? And I think when you've got a ground like that where you rely so heavily on your fan base, when the fans turn, I think you've got a real problem there. I think some of those players are being turned on by the fans. I know Johan Cabaye is taking a bit of stick. And as is Jason Punchin and Andros Townsend, who might not be around to take stick anymore. But yeah, I think once you start getting the fans on your back, you've got a bit of a problem there. And speaking of fans on their backs, that leads us rather lovely transition into Sunderland. Does anybody think Sunderland can survive? Because I don't know who to blame in this. Do we blame Ellis Short? Do we blame David Moyes? Do we blame the players? If there was ever a side that are long overdue going out of this league, Ross, it's surely Sunderland, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they've been skirting this for years now. They do the same thing. They have a manager at the start of the season, goes poorly. They get to about January, they replace him. They go on this brilliant run to the end of the year. Then they either keep the manager on for half a season and sack him and do it again, or they get rid of him at the end of the season and try again. They have reinvented this squad about, 8 times in the past 4 years, and it's just broken. It's all just fallen apart. The players just are so mismatched. There's still players there from like 2 or 3 regimes ago. It's a strange little concoction they've now got there. So many injuries, so many players that want out. They've now got Honeyman playing for them, who was playing for Gateshead about, this time last season he was playing for Gateshead. Now they're asking him to be a Premier League player. It's all just gone wrong. There's so many things that have gone wrong there, and you listen to David Moyes' interviews, he sounds like they're already a Championship side. So I don't see much hope for them, but like I keep saying to Sunderland fans, if there are any listening anyway, is that the Championship is a fantastic place for a club like Sunderland. They'll be able to sweep the decks, and David Moyes in there will be able to build a decent team. It may take them a couple of seasons to come back up, like Fulham have experienced, but I think the Championship is the best place for Sunderland right now. They are just a bit of a ragtag army, and they look in desperate need of a relegation.
Yeah, I think it'd be a blessing in disguise for them, relegation. I think they need to just go down, clear out a lot of the deadwood, press the refresh button in effect. My only issue is that I'm not sure if David Moyes will want to be around for that. I mean, with his reputation plummeting over the past few years, as much as I rate the Championship, I think it's a good league. I think that he'll be scared of if they don't get promoted straight back up in the next 1 or 2 seasons, provided they do get relegated, then I think his reputation will take a bit of a hit if he doesn't get the backup, and I think he's wary of that.
As he should be, yeah. And Josh, there's a little amusing stat that continues to do the rounds about Mr. Jack Rodwell. I don't know what the tally is now, but let's just say every time he plays, they don't win. It was a 2-0 defeat to West Brom, who, credit where credit's due. That's no easy game. But in the old days, you would think Sunderland going away to West Brom, you'd think, yeah, we could get something out of this. It was just no sign of it yesterday, was there? And 2 cracking goals as well, has to be said, particularly Chris Brunt's, because he got behind that, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's 36 starts for Jack Rodwell without a win.
Wow.
It's 35 or 36. It's definitely too many to be going on your radar, and I don't think he's going to have like a Gareth Bale-style turnaround, because he had a pretty awful start to his career at Tottenham as well. I think he went into the mid-20s for starting games without a win. But yeah, you've got to give credit to West Brom. They did what they needed to do. They're having an absolutely fantastic season. They're at the top of that kind of mini league of where you'd expect, teams that aren't going to get into Europe, but just trying to be safe from relegation. I think West Brom are a solid mid-table team. I would be surprised if not by next season there isn't a new man behind the wheel of West Brom ship, so to speak, because I think Tony Pulis is getting towards taking them as far as he can. He generally leaves a team around about this position.
That's an interesting thought, actually, because I always thought Palace was a good fit for him, and then, of course, he walked away. Seems to be certain reasons as to why he walked away, of course, but yeah, I tend to agree with that, unless, of course, he is given the money that is being talked about by West Brom. But yeah, Sunderland do appear.
That is a misconception about Tony Pulis, about him not having a lot of money. He's spent a huge amount of money at Stoke, when you look back at it, on players who generally aren't really worth that kind of money. The fee he paid for Charlie Adam was absurd when you look at it in context with other signings that went round. So I think it's one of those, you just need to have a look a little bit closer at what he has done at teams, and he does require quite a big transfer kitty in order to get the job done that he needs to.
Yeah, I think he tends to hold the board to account quite a lot in the media too, in order to do that.
That's true.
But I think that Josh is right, particularly because of the type of players he signs. People will assume that he's not spending much money, but in reality he is. But I'm still a big fan of him, and I still maintain, I made this point in our group chat earlier in the week, that I think if he was behind the wheel at a Europe club that was, getting into Europe, then I think he could achieve a lot of success. If he has quality players in the team, combined with the defensive solidity and resistance that he inspires in his teams, then I think he could be quite successful. But I don't think it's an experiment we'll be seeing anytime soon.
No, I don't think. I can imagine Tony Pulis at the hands of, Marseille or something. It'd just be bizarre, wouldn't it? But then again, Stephen Fletcher played for Marseille, so anything's possible, I guess. More on Fletch later on. We should just touch briefly on Watford and Bournemouth. That was a 2-2 draw. Troy Deeney back on the score sheet, as was Benik Afobe in that one as well. But probably a result that neither side particularly were happy about, although Watford, I would guess, would be the slightly more happier of the two, getting a point away from home. And we do have to, although it seems weird to leave it almost second last, we're going to leave it to, but the big game, quote unquote, of the weekend was Manchester City and Spurs. Ross, just quickly before we talk about the game, Pep Guardiola watch. He was a little bit chippy again. We'll come on to the reasons why, and in fairness, he had every reason to be chippy. But he's doing his sideways shuffle thing again. I don't know if you've noticed this in interviews. He likes to sort of rock from side to side. It's quite odd. He ruled his team out of the title race a week ago. This week, he says they won't give up and they're back in it. Yeah, thoughts?
Well, he said that he never gave up, even though last week he said they were out of it. I have a lot of good things to say about Man City this week, so it's kind of a shame that he said something completely stupid. But yeah, it was one of those quotes that I looked at and just kind of went, huh? What? But last week, huh? And then I immediately went to you and was like, am I right in saying that he said the complete opposite last week? And you reaffirmed. It's like, oh dear, I was going to go on tonight and say what a great performance it was and how much I enjoyed watching them, and now he said something silly.
You can still do that, I don't mind.
I mean, he said something silly anyway, because they picked up on the refereeing decision on the BBC. It was their first question, because they just watched it, and he went off on one about how the BBC have made that their first question, and I'm just like, for crying out loud, just answer the question, and then you can get to the stuff you want to talk about. He's a strange bloke. I love him to bits as a coach, but sometimes it's just like, can you just answer the question? Can you just be consistent and talk about what they're asking you to talk about? But to be fair, he had every right to be angry with the decisions the referee made, and the way the game went. But yeah, some of the comments afterwards, I was just like, man, I was so looking forward to talking about how good Man City were on this podcast, and now you said something silly, so now I've got to bring that up.
Yeah, fair point. And James, it's a 2-2 draw with Spurs. Credit has to go to Spurs, of course, because City, went 2-0 up. I think Mauricio Pochettino made the point after the game that with the incident that we are discussing here, that it was the foul by Kyle Walker, who, to be perfectly honest, I don't think has the intelligence to say anything different. Whoops, that's my bias going. But he admitted after the game that he did shove Raheem Sterling and, quote, got away with it. It was clearly a foul, but then I think Pochettino made the point that Leroy Sané's goal, the first goal, was quite an obvious handball, albeit in a running motion. So could you argue it's a little bit tit for tat, or are you more on the side of saying, well, actually no, because Spurs scored from the breakaway after that penalty was not given? So which side of the argument do you fall on?
Unfortunately, even though I was irritated by Pep's comments as well, I'm going to fall on the side of Man City on this argument. I think calls for a handball given in run-up to Sané's goal were very tenuous. There's lots of talk of the handball rule, but I just think that it was very hard to even see a touch in his hand there. And I think that the Raheem Sterling foul that's a stone wall penalty. If he went down, then it would have been given. Ruud Gullit was very ferociously making this point on Match of the Day, talking about how players feel the need to go down because otherwise fouls won't be given, and I'm beginning to see that too. Obviously, I don't think that excuses diving in any way, but I think that definitely if there's even the slightest contact, players are feeling the need to accentuate it in order for something to be given, and that isn't on. I think that something needs to be done around the area. But I think going into this game, people knew there would be lots of goals, and it delivered really. The rise of the back three again, Spurs playing a back three. I'm all for it.
Yeah, it certainly got them out of a bit of a hole because, as Ross pointed out earlier, I thought Man City for long periods were very impressive in this game, and Spurs will be quite happy, I think, looking back with the point. But Josh, before we lay this game to rest as well, I just want to talk about Sergio Aguero very quickly because you've made a point that I completely agree with, and I think it needs a bit of airtime. He's, in your opinion, and definitely mine as well, he's being asked to do things that, in our opinions anyway, he doesn't need to be doing. He's a goal scorer, and that was working. But it sounds, or seems, from what we think anyway, that Pep is asking him to do things that are not really in his makeup, and because of that, he's suffering as a player.
Yeah, so it is a strange one, but Pep said when he came in that he wanted to make Aguero go to that next level, to become that complete forward, the likes of, you'll see, Luis Suarez at Barcelona, that kind of harrying kind of centre forward that will drive at the back line, will drift out wide, will give you a lot of work rate and build kind of relationships with their midfielders and lay on not just goals but assists for the team. And it's not in his makeup really. Aguero is that luxury striker. He will get you goals. He'll be quiet for 89 minutes in a game and will pop up to score the winner in the 95th minute to win you the league. That is Aguero. And what Pep's got him doing, and this is one of the many experiments that he's currently running with this squad, and one that I think needs to stop, is what's going on with Aguero. He has just brought in a striker in Jesus, who does actually fit that bill. How he played for Brazil was exactly what Pep requires in his centre forward. Someone that drifts between the lines but also drifts out wide to open up the space for the marauding Gundogan, Yaya Toure, Sterling, De Bruyne, Silva, Sane, all to come through and occupy that space. We've seen Arsenal do it with Alexis, where he'll drift out wide to open the space for Mesut Ozil to come in, and that's how Ozil's got more goals this season and less assists. I think we could see, and I think Man City players and Man City fans would hate this, but Aguero leaving in order to generate the funds for Pep to find the player that fits him better if he wants to continue with this experiment.
You see, this is where Pep is beginning to annoy me. I've always been a big fan of his, but I think the one thing that makes a really good coach, a good manager, is the ability to be resourceful and work with what you had. I realise that managing a big clubs, you're always going to have funds available to you, but I still think to a degree it's necessary to come in to use the players you've had. I spoke a lot about how Antonio Conte, when he first came in at Chelsea, he was playing not necessarily the system he wanted to play, but a system he thought the players could play, the players he had were capable of doing. And gradually, as the season progressed, as he saw what the players were capable of, as he became familiar with his playing staff, he gravitated towards his preferred system. And I don't see why Pep Guardiola couldn't have done that. He was so quick to impose his style. It would have even quietened down what the media was saying about his style if he were to go with something a bit more familiar to his current crop of players, even for this season. Because I definitely think they could have been closer to title contention for this season if such a massive change hadn't occurred. And gradually, as the season's progressed, I know he doesn't usually stay long at a club, but over the next 2-3 seasons, he could have moulded them eventually into the side he wants. But this type of change overnight isn't ideal, and it's what's led to Raheem Sterling being played through the middle in a front three.
It's too much change, isn't it?
Just on that point and the comparisons against Conte and Pep, I would like to plug my blog that's just gone out on that exact subject, because otherwise I'll end up reeling it off here. And it is basically on those points of the squads that have been inherited by those two men. Basically what you've got with the Chelsea squad is a title-winning squad that was ruined by a manager. And what you've got with the Man City squad is a ruined squad that ruined a manager. Because Pellegrini was doing fantastic things with that squad, and look at the state of it. The fullbacks are all over 30 in that team. You've got Yaya Toure as well, and I think we'll have to see in May how the season overall has happened and what Pep's managed to do. But he's only been able to address in one transfer window one part of this team, and that was the attack, because the attack needed revitalising as well as the defence. And I think he's just gone with sort the attack out, because it's expected that Man City score goals. They are an entertaining team. They've never been a shut-up shop team. Even under Mancini, they were still more open than you'd expect from an Italian manager.
And as Ross has said as well, what was it? What was the point you made, Ross, previously about? Oh, of course, yeah. He had time to strengthen before he came in.
Yeah. For me, if I was going into that job, I would have looked at it and I would have said, okay, the attack is still good enough for this season. I can still work with that attack. It's the defence I need to change, but he's gone for a different tack, which I find very interesting. Clearly, it's started to backfire on him, but it's an interesting approach. As James was just saying, that Pep's starting to annoy him. He hasn't annoyed me yet, Pep, except for some of the silly things he's been saying, but that's a different matter. In terms of how he's managing the team and the tactics he's employing, I'm still finding it very interesting. How he's trying to change this and that. For me, I just think at the moment it looks like they're not playing on instinct. We've just been talking about Aguero. He's a striker that shoots on instinct, whereas what I saw yesterday was players getting into very good positions and then thinking, I should pass it now, or I should just take a touch, just give it a second, see if there's someone in a better position, when actually they should just be going for it. But it's very interesting to watch, to see how he's trying to mould and change these players, but yeah, at the moment it just doesn't seem to be working.
But do you not think that he has the players? Well, one thing that's intrigued me, going back to the whole Conte versus Guardiola situation again, some of the players that Antonio Conte's implemented into his Chelsea team or Chelsea matchday squad, like Nathaniel Chalobah, Ake's come back in, Victor Moses has flourished, and Ivanovic, who he thought was on the way out, he kind of has a role to play in that back three. I don't see why Pep Guardiola couldn't have done this type of thing with Man City. So, you have players that have been floundering, like Mangala, and surely this would have been his chance to prove himself. You had players such as Jason Denayer. Obviously, Dedrick Boyata's gone on a permanent to Celtic, but Boyata's been around the City setup for years. He's barely been loaned out. Years in the making, surely, as a centre-back replacement. You would have thought that perhaps he could have been tried there. Not saying he would have been perfect, but for now, perhaps they could have given a young player like him a chance. Same price for Jason Denayer. Pablo Maffio, who's just gone on loan this month to Girona. People have spoken about how good he is at that fullback role, and I don't see, again, with the ageing fullbacks, any reason why he couldn't have slotted in there. It's, again, just making use of what you have, even just for now. And I think that City, there are players there who could do the roles that he wants. Just understated.
It's a great point, and especially when you look at how much Man City have been putting in the media about how much they're investing in youth academies and coaching and all this, and it's like, right, you've got the best coach in the world, quote unquote, and you're not looking to coach the players you've got. Completely agree. Breaking news, by the way, as well, Gabriel Jesus is still celebrating the offside goal. So I hope he gets home safely. Right, let's have a quick Southampton corner, because we have to when you two are on. So, Ross, you can start us off. 3-0 victory is the final game of the Premier League to cover this weekend. 3-0 victory over Leicester. Are you happy this weekend? Are you a bit happier with what went on?
I'm thrilled. It was fantastic. It was the first time in a very long time that we've actually looked like Southampton Football Club, as far as I'm concerned. Played a high press, played on the counter, controlled the game without needing to go sideways and backwards. We were just on the front foot, took the game to Leicester. We were fully in control of their attacks, never really caused us any major problems. Should have had 4 or 5, in my opinion. We've had a goal ruled out for offside, even though it's A, onside, and B, an own goal. And then Højbjerg has gone through one-on-one and missed a very good opportunity. Almost looked like today we were playing a different system, with Romeu dropped a little bit deeper, and then Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg pushed up a little bit further, kind of like a 4-1-2-2-1, if I've got the numbers right. That's what it looked like. It looked like Romeu was deeper, and it gave Højbjerg especially the chance to move forward, and I think you saw it, the success of it with Ward-Prowse's opening goal as well. So I really like the look of it. I thought it was fantastic. It was one of our better performances, and we took our chances when they came. So I'm very, very happy, and it's a good setup for a very, very big game in midweek against Liverpool in the EFL Cup. So I was thrilled. The only concern is that Van Dijk limped off with an ankle injury, but apparently that's not as bad as it looks. So at the very least, he should be back for the FA Cup game against Arsenal next weekend, but we're not sure about the midweek against Liverpool.
Good stuff. And
Yeah,
you same for you, James?
Yeah, I think Ross covered most things there. The one thing I would say is, I mean, Puel started off playing a 4-4-2 diamond, playing a 4-3-3 over the past few months. One problem with a 4-3-3 sometimes is that the forward players can become quite isolated if your three in the middle aren't kind of technical, attacking, forward-driving centre midfield players, and I think that's a problem in this Southampton team that we witnessed. So with Romeu dropping a bit deeper, Ward-Prowse and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg are usually a bit more deep-lying centre midfielders. We're given free rein to kind of attack and go forward, and I think that worked to our benefit. The only thing I would say, you have to approach this result cautiously, considering it was against Leicester, and given their defence. I mean, they've conceded 36 goals this season already, and that's more than they conceded all of last season.
Haven't won away from home this season yet either, Leicester.
Exactly. So I think that, I mean, it's the game we needed to get back on track, but I'm still not. And we look to compete a different team, but I'm not convinced. I'll need to see that against a team in good shape before I, start blowing the trumpet for Paul.
Enter Liverpool in midweek. So, yeah, that will be the test. And I hope Claude gets it right, because Ross knows I'm a bit biased, but yeah, I think he'll get it right.
I think the general feeling, I don't speak for all Southampton fans here, because I know a lot of them want him out, but the general feeling is that the jury's still out, and we need to take stock and see where we are in the summer, and then go from there, because this has been a strange season. Southampton Football Club are not used to playing this many games, and we're also doing very well in the Cup, when we've had this strange congestion in the middle of the league. Generally speaking, the jury is still out on Puel, but I do know there are a lot of Southampton fans that say it's boring and he needs to go. But based on some of the performances that we've seen, I can understand that, but games like today remind you that, and for example, Bournemouth and Liverpool in the Cup, performances like this remind you what can be done if we had a normal season and Puel could just get a couple more sessions in a week to be able to train this squad rather than just prepare them for the next game, to be able to get in an extra striker, which we desperately need. The Font situation's now done with, he's gone to West Ham. So it's been a strange season, and I think, generally speaking, the jury's just still out.
Yeah, whenever I hear Jose Font's name, all I can hear now is "Here comes the money." Anywho, that kind of wraps us up for the Premier League. Only thing just to say is that breaking news this evening is that Hull City have confirmed that Ryan Mason does indeed have a fractured skull, but he is apparently stable. So that's good news. Let's hope that stays the same way and nothing gets bad overnight for him. Wishing him all the best. Right, Ross, time for your championship roundup. I know that Josh has a couple of things to chat to you about, and I'm sure James will chip in afterwards as well. So I'll hand over the reins to you. What's been going on in the championship and below this weekend?
Right, so let's start in League Two. A couple of games in League One and League Two have gone down because of the weather. They've all went down because of frozen pitches. So in League Two, you had Leyton Orient, Morecambe called off, and Crawley, Portsmouth. It didn't stop us having some very important games though. First thing to say is that Dave Jones is the new manager of Hartlepool United. He was there to watch them beat Stevenage 2-0. But I think he'll take charge of the next game. But that's a good start for him as the manager of Hartlepool United. Other noticeable results, you have Grimsby Town beating Notts County 2-0, which puts Notts County into the relegation zone. That's Kevin Nolan's second game in charge. They weren't very good at all, and it's concerning now to see them in the bottom two. But we'll have to wait and see how they go. Personally, I'd be very sad to see them go down if it was to happen, but still a long way to go. As you can see from Exeter City, who were dead and buried about a month and a half ago, and since then have been absolutely fantastic. They beat Colchester United 3-0, which is a big scoreline considering how well Colchester have been doing as well. But that puts Exeter up to 9th on 39 points, so brilliant turnaround from Paul Tisdale. Doncaster Rovers 3-1 winners over Crewe Alexandra puts them 4 points clear at the top. They do have, or Plymouth I should say, who are in second. They do have a game in hand though to close that down to 1, but a 4-point gap is brilliant considering how tight this title race has been. Plymouth themselves getting a 2-1 away win over Cheltenham Town. Carlisle's starting to stutter. They drew 1-1 with Accrington Stanley this weekend, which does open the door for Portsmouth to close the gap on them. Portsmouth now have that game in hand as well because of the postponement against Crawley. If they can win that, they'll go joint on points, but they have a better goal difference as well. So by the time that game is played, Portsmouth could be up to 3rd. Moving into League One, your two cancelled games in this division were Charlton Athletic versus Scunthorpe and Southend versus Bolton, again both due to frozen pitches. The League One action actually kicked off on Friday with Port Vale and Bury. 2 more goals from James Vaughan for Bury, which now takes them up to 6 goals in 2 games. But again, another good point for Bury. I think now they've only lost 2 of their last 5, which considering they lost 16 in a row is quite good. Good turnaround for Bury. Bradford 1, Millwall 1 is a big result near the top as well. Bradford not exactly starting to slip, but they are losing their grip on the top 4 positions. Coventry are losing 1-0 away, or at home I should say, to Fleetwood Town, which puts Fleetwood back up into 4th I think now, which would be a massive shock to see them finish there. The shock of the weekend, not just in League One, but I think in all the divisions, I personally think this top Swansea beating Liverpool as well, was Rochdale. Rochdale have been absolutely impervious at home. I think they've won their last 10 at home and kept something around 8 clean sheets, in and around that kind of figure. They hosted Oxford United, and Oxford beat them 4-0, which is a massive scoreline. And they also managed to chip the goalkeeper from about 35 yards out near the end of the game. So incredible result for Oxford, and one that does knock Rochdale down into 6th now. The highest goal scoring game of the weekend was Milton Keynes Dons 5, Northampton Town 3, which was fantastic for the neutrals. Sheffield United 2, Gillingham 2 as well is a big result near the top as well, especially for Sheffield United, who carry on kind of just pushing themselves a little bit further away from Scunthorpe, who remain in 2nd because of their postponed game this weekend. And Walsall with a 3-1 home win over Bristol Rovers as well. Into the Championship. Now, the game that started the weekend was the Friday night fixture, Brighton Hove Albion 2, Sheffield Wednesday 1, which we'll go into a bit more detail in a minute. But I hope you watched that game. If you did, then you would have seen 3 red cards, a missed penalty, a fantastic double save from that penalty, and a cracking goal from Anthony Knockaert to kick us off. So, a brilliant game. The other 2 televised games, by the way, from the Championship this weekend were Queen's Park Rangers 1, Fulham 1, which was a fantastic watch just because of the way the 2 teams set up to counter each other. And then Barnsley 3, Leeds United 2, which is another notable game because of one Mike Dean, who was quote-unquote demoted to the Championship to shield him from some of the criticism he's faced in the Premier League as of late. He managed to redefine the boundary of the penalty area this week when he gave a handball that was clearly outside of the penalty area as a penalty, which put Leeds back in it at 3-2. But 3 fantastic goals from Barnsley, including a brilliant goal from Conor Hurahan. He's being linked with Aston Villa, among others. Personally, I think he could step into a Premier League team, but that's a debate for another day. Aston Villa 2, Preston North End 2. Everyone kind of expects them to go on this massive run towards the playoffs, and even I touted them about a week or 2 back now to maybe go on and do that, but they've now stuttered. It's who's the name of their striker? McCormick, I think it is, that they bought from Fulham. He has missed training, I think, 2 or 3 times now. His latest excuse is that the electric gates on his house wouldn't open, so he couldn't get to training. But Steve Bruce is not having any of it. Apparently there are now some stories that he'll be kicked out sometime during this window, but bizarre bizarre situation with him. Blackburn 1, Birmingham City 1 is a good point for Blackburn. It's another terrible result for Gianfranco Zola at Birmingham City, though, who this week has become the first Birmingham City boss since 1889. Yeah, not 1889. Not to win any of his opening 7 matches in charge of Birmingham. Incredible stat, but just goes to show you what a silly choice it was to get rid of Gary Rowett in change of Gianfranco Zola. Cardiff with a last-minute winner against Burton Albion. Derby County with a 3-2 win over Reading. Again, Reading, they seem to be slowly slipping away at the top end. They're now down to 5th, 2 defeats in 2 for them. Huddersfield Town with a 2-0 win over Ipswich, kind of compounds a terrible week for Mick McCarthy's men. Newcastle United with a 4-0 win over Rotherham. Norwich getting a 3-1 win over Wolverhampton Wanderers, which did also feature a red card for Wolverhampton Wanderers goalkeeper Carla Kime. Apparently, the Norwich board came out this week and said that they're going to be sticking with Alex Neil, regardless, for the rest of the season. So I can no longer say I'd be surprised if he's there next week. I still would be, but I can't say it anymore. So Nottingham Forest 1, Bristol City 0. I said last week about Philip Montagnier leaving. Lots of protest this week about the owner, Fawaz. But at the same time, when you score the kind of goal that Ben Osborne scored in this game and get a brilliant 1-0 win over Bristol City and consign them to the worst run of defeats in the history of their club, which is 8, I don't think you can have too many complaints about how the day went. Wigan Athletic with a brilliant 2-1 win over Brentford, which I think now moves them out of the relegation zone for the first time since probably about the start of the season. We'll round us up for this weekend of fixtures, but a fantastic result for them as well. Josh, I was mentioning the Brighton game. I thought it was a fantastic watch as a neutral. I imagine, as someone that's invested in Brighton Hove Albion, that wasn't as comfortable.
No, squeaky bum time would be the best way to describe it. That was a mad game. Anthony Knockaert with, at it again. Looks to overhit his touch when he brings it to one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Manages, with one of my favourite skill moves I think any player can do, without touching the ball but with a shimmy of the body, sell any player the wrong way, to just glide past him. And then, again, just to dummy 2 defenders who are on the line covering the goalkeeper and knock it over a third to finish it off. And I think Tony Kay is the friend of the podcast because he's just absolutely fantastic, and hopefully he is the man to lead Brighton up into the Premier League because he's in a great run of form. But then came a very unlucky own goal from Lewis Dunk. Forestieri puts the ball in from the wing. I believe it's Ollie Norwood, kind of sticks a leg out to try and intercept the cross, which he does, and the ball's flying towards goal. And instinctively, Lewis Dunk tries to put it round the post with his head and manages just to beat Stockdale, who's standing directly behind him and was happy to catch the ball or punch it away, whatever his want would be at that point. And then we get one of the strangest red card decisions I think I've seen, although this could be biased talking, with Glenn Murray, who from about, I'd say about 5, maybe 8 yards out, is on the receiving end of a well-hit shot that's travelling a lot further than you do a head height, and he just throws his arms up to cover his face. And I know Glenn Murray is not the best looking guy, but you still want to protect your face irrespective of what damage could happen to it and the extent of that damage. And to see the ref give a red card for deliberate handball and a penalty, I think was very harsh. But then what David Stockdale did after that, a man that I have criticised but cannot criticise him for that double save, it's absolutely fantastic. Just the reflexes to get down there. I think it's probably the second best save I've seen this weekend. If anyone's seen what Carl Darlow did for Newcastle, you just need to put the Benny Hill theme tune over the top of it. But the guy was absolutely fantastic with denying Rotherham a goal-scoring opportunity. And then we get the Knockaert second goal right near the death, just to sort that out with 10 men to get absolutely fantastically whipped ball in from Pocanoli on loan from West Brom. Knockaert at the back post, just sticks a leg out, gets the touch on it, beats the keeper, and then we turn into a mad 5 minutes at the end for Sheffield Wednesday with the aforementioned Stephen Fletcher. Apparently it's the chairman who decides the squad numbers and thinks Stephen Fletcher looks like a number 6. So he had a bit of an altercation with Dale Stephens in the box, which resulted in him putting towards a footballer's headbutt. I wouldn't think on the streets that's defined as a headbutt, but rams his head into Dale Stephens and dutifully given his marching orders. And then a few minutes later, Hutchinson's given a second yellow for, I'd refer to it biasly as an assault on Solly March. And I certainly winced at that point when that tackle came in, because March has only just come back from quite a bad knee injury that he sustained around about the same time this season, last season, and was out for a good number of months. And to see him get caught by a completely unnecessary tackle because the player wasn't getting anywhere near him and was coming in just with the decision to get a bit on his man. I think it was a hard fought 2-1 win for Brighton, and to go marching on. And they've got the game in hand to play on Tuesday night, which I think Reading have also got a game in hand from when the fog cooled off a couple of games over the Christmas period.
I have to say, I was really disappointed when Knockaert left the Championship. I think he left Leicester. I think he went off somewhere to Belgium, I want to say. I was gutted to see him go. It's so nice to see him come back to Brighton and absolutely smash it. I think he's been good, not just this season, but across the whole calendar year. Just on red cards and strange refereeing decisions, I do completely agree on Glenn Murray, but I do also want to get your thoughts, Josh, on Mike Dean, because you were watching the Barnsley game as well. Like I said there, he was quote-unquote demoted to the Championship so that he could be taken away from the Premier League spotlight. He has made a massive, massive flub with this handball that's clearly outside the area, but he's given as a penalty. Do you think we'll be seeing him in the Premier League next week, or do you think he'll probably be staying in the Championship?
Yeah, I think it's a very strange one to quote-unquote demote a referee down from the Premier League to then take charge of the Yorkshire Derby, which was arguably one of the biggest games in the Championship this weekend, especially it being televised. So I don't know how you can try and ensure that the shrinking violet that is Mike Dean is going to keep out of everybody's eye line this weekend when you then put him immediately on primetime television. I think it just shows a bit of arrogance from the referees, what are they called? The Referee Association.
Yes.
It just shows a bit of arrogance for them to demote him down to arguably a league in England that is worth more to the winners than anybody else in the top 5 leagues. It is the now, I think it's estimated, the £120 million final for the playoffs because of the income that you can get from it. And although it's benefiting a team that is going for the playoffs, arguably in Leeds, who are in and around there, I think, it's very, very poor decision from him, and one that you'd think even his linesman would try and call him up on, because it is that obvious that it's outside the box. I think perhaps he just can't keep up with the speed of that break and just takes an assumption, and he's going to listen to no man that protests about saying it was clearly inside the box, because Chris Wood is just going to agree to say, it is a penalty, irrespective of where it is. I think all footballers in that situation are going to agree with the referee if they gain an advantage from it, like a penalty.
Agreed. It's a very, very weird decision to see him given such a high-profile game. I think we all agreed on that. We're going to sort of finish our EFL roundup with something from James about Leyton Orient. Just before we do, we have to cover the most important event of the EFL at the weekend. Anyone else see Steve Bruce in the Kebab House?
Oh, yes, I did.
What a picture that fantastic. Full training gear in a kebab house. Love it. Get on, Stevie. James, Leyton Orient, you wanted to just have a little bit of a chat about them before we go to listeners' questions?
Yeah, it's more of a rant, really. I mean, it's been an ongoing thing for the past couple of years, and I just think it's astounding, the state of the Football League, or EFL, that it's known in terms of how it's governed, how it's administrated, and in particular the fit and proper persons test. I think it's remarkable that no intervention has occurred. I mean, Leighton Orient have gone through, I think, 8 managers in the past 2 years. As a club, I have quite a strong soft spot for, being one of my local teams. I go to see them play occasionally, and it's ridiculous how a team that was 1 game from the Championship is now battling relegation in League Two, and I think it's safe to say they'll be sentenced to it. A club statement went out this week from the chief executive, Alejandro Angileri, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but it's one of the most ridiculous statements that you've ever read to come from a club administration, and it's basically attacking the fans. So one of the line reads, Mr. Bacchetti, who's the chairman, did not like the fan protest because at the beginning of the season, everyone, supporters included, praised the club for their summer transfer business. Thereafter, Mr. Bacchetti doesn't play on Saturday. Now, this kind of strand of poorly written English continues throughout the statement, and he continues to attack some of the players that have left the club in previous years, such as him saying that players such as Darius Henderson, Joby McAnuff and Jordan Bowery lack desire. So it seems that now the kind of input financially that's come into the club from Bacchetti is now presumably going to stop, and you're going to be forced to rely on players. It's got to the point where even there's rumours that the club's going to go in administration and get a 10-point deduction that would completely sentence the club for relegation pretty much. And then at the end of the statement, Bacchetti goes on to apologise for his ill health, and he thinks the fact that he's been absent from being around the team at the training ground has caused a negative impact on the squad. And it's ridiculous that someone in its mindset should be anywhere near running a team. And we're going to bang on about this again and again while people like Massimo Cellino, Carson Young at Birmingham City and Francisco Bacchetti are allowed to run football clubs, that something isn't being done. Even Faction Shinawatra years ago at Manchester City, who was, he wanted for human rights abuses as the Thai Prime Minister, was allowed to, to run a Premier League football club, and it's just not good for image at all. And it's really ridiculous, and it's a shame to happen to a club like Leyton Orient, who are really going places.
For every good owner, there is sadly several of these types that are just, wrong. Let's be honest. When you see clubs going out of business and you see clubs spending money that they don't have, and it is a shame. And that was superb, good stuff. I like it's always nice to hear about clubs that maybe we don't feature on a regular basis. So chin up, Orient fans. It can only get better, hopefully. Okay, we will finish with some listener questions. Just before we do, we'll just have a quick look ahead at the Premier League and Championship fixtures for next week. Obviously, we've got an FA Cup next week, actually, I should say. But the fixtures after that, ahead of time. I think the Premier League, obviously there's one fixture that stands out. This will be the week, or the midweek, I should say, of the 31st. We'll have a show before these fixtures, but Liverpool Chelsea is a midweek game, so I'm sure we'll be all over that one. Definitely one to look out for as far as Premier League fixtures go. And as for your Championship fixtures, well, obviously the teams that are not involved in the FA Cup will have games next weekend. As Ross and Josh pointed out, Brighton, Cardiff and Reading, Fulham are your midweek games this weekend coming, as is Leeds Forest on the Wednesday as well. Then on the Saturday, Norwich Birmingham catches the eye. That's two sides that both need a win badly. And then you've got a full midweek programme the weekend after that as well, which we'll preview, I'm sure, next week. So a couple of games to look forward to then. Okay, we'll finish up with a couple of listener questions then. We just got the 3. 2 of them are from our good friend Bobby, Chakraborty, not Checky Booty, as Danny always says. Bobby wants to ask, first of all, and I'll give this one to... I'll give it to Ross, actually. Bobby wants to ask, do you think Granit Xhaka has now got a reputation in the Premier League, or is it just that ref? Because, of course, John Moss has sent him off twice now.
I think he's got a reputation flat out. I don't think it's just a Premier League reputation. I don't watch a tremendous amount of Bundesliga. I catch it when I can, but I don't watch a tremendous amount of it. Even I knew that Granit Xhaka got sent off a heck of a lot for Gladbach. And in fact, the one time I did watch Gladbach, I had a bet on, and I think I had Dortmund to beat Gladbach, but for both teams to score, so I sat down and watched it. And even in that game, in the one game I watched, he managed to get himself sent off. So it's a reputation that he's had across the continent, and I think most people should know about, and probably did know about when they did their due diligence on him. I think fans are probably coming around to it now. Fans that just see the Premier League probably didn't know. They will be looking at it now. But I think anyone that's working at a football club should know and should do their due diligence and should probably know that he is a player that has got that ricket in him. So I'm not overly surprised. Like I say, I think it's fans that don't look outside the Premier League that will be looking at him and going, he's got a temper on him. I think everyone else kind of already knew it.
Yeah, well summed up. And I'll give this one to you, James, because Bobby also wants to ask, is there any way of stopping Chelsea?
In all honesty, I think not. Arsenal are Arsenal. Man City in their transition phase. Liverpool, good attack, poor defence. I think perhaps the only team that could stop Chelsea are Spurs. But I think with this season soon closing, and I don't think there'll be too many changes to either side's playing staff. So I definitely think that Chelsea will sail away with it this season.
Yeah, sadly, tend to agree. I know Ross does. And the final question, do you know what? We might have to do a bit of research into this, but we'll do our best to fudge an answer at least now, just for the benefit of Tom, who's at 5 Star Flips, our good friend Tom. He has asked, it's a brilliant question, I have to say. He's a Man United fan, of course, but he wants to know, if you had to pick 3 of the most underrated or underappreciated players in the Premier League, who would they be? So, Josh, you've just stepped up in the chat box there. You've got 3, so you can have 3, and then maybe the rest of us will have 1 each, because I'm struggling already. So who are your 3?
I've got 3, but I might not be able to justify them, because they're just off the top of my head. The first one I'm going to start with I've mentioned already, and that's Lanzini, but I've liked him for a couple of seasons and I've seen what he could do in different leagues. He's definitely underrated, and I think we'll see him shine now that he's left the ever-increasing shadow of Dimitri Payet after he started eating all those pies and McDonald's. The next one, Charlie Daniels, left back at Bournemouth. I think he's getting a lot of praise now, but he has been consistent. I think he's the top scoring defender in the calendar year, or last calendar year, and gets plenty of assists for that team. He's definitely a danger man for them. And the final one, which I think might take Ross and James's one, is James Ward-Prowse. Very underrated player for me. I think Southampton fans see him very, very highly. I think I'd just wait for Ross James to agree on that one.
You haven't been on many Southampton forums lately, have you?
No. But I think his style of play and what he can bring to a side, I think he's very underrated. And perhaps managers have seen that as well, that perhaps he's a little bit underrated. He's got a great set piece, and I think he can dictate the tempo that a team plays, much like Michael Carrick does for Man United. I think he's got that same ability.
Some good answers there. James, have you got, just give us one if you've got one, really. I'm still struggling.
I mean, I echo what Josh says in terms of Charlie Daniels, actually. I think there's a couple Bournemouth players that would slot into this category of underappreciated. One player in particular, like, he's kind of just burst on the scene this season, Ryan Fraser. I can't believe, the rise that he's had this season from where he's come. I think it's been incredible. He's lightning quick, really skillful, and he's chipped in with a couple goals. So definitely him. And player mentioned earlier in Tom Carroll. I think now he's at Swansea, he should flourish. So those two I'd probably single out. Yeah,
good answers those. Ross, have you got anyone you would add as well?
I would say, possibly biased, but I still believe this, Stephen Davis from Southampton. I think is hugely underrated and has been even by our own fan base for many years.
It's a great shout.
Another one from Bournemouth, another different one. I would say Harry Arter. I would say the tragic thing about Harry Arter... I'm sorry. I would say the tragic thing about Harry Arter is that it took the death of his young daughter for us to actually realise how good a player Harry Arter is and has been for Bournemouth. But frankly, there's even more players you could bring up from Bournemouth. Andrew Sermon's been brilliant. I think Smith, I can't think of which Smith it is now, but Smith in the back.
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith, there you go. He's been brilliant for them. Charlie Daniels, Simon Francis, Stephen Cook, all of them have been brilliant. The other one I would pick to add to my two is Moussa Dembele from Tottenham. I think he is borderline unplayable sometimes when he's in the midfield, but I don't think he always gets the credit he deserves.
Good. Okay, so I've had a think. The only one I can come up with that comes to mind, and we might have to revisit this if we ever do a live. Well, we will do a live podcast. We are still trying to work on the day we'll do it, but if we ever do a live podcast, this is definitely one we should get everyone's thoughts on. I'm going to go for Winston Reid at West Ham. Every time I see him play, yeah. I always think,
good shout.
For a player who's as a New Zealand international, it's not exactly a footballing mecca. He always looks the part to me. Good on the deck, looks like a good leader, strong, sort of commands his area when he's in a defensive zone. Good at set pieces. I think West Ham be lost without him, and I think him and Fonte actually, ironically, might make quite the partnership. So,
for a year.
I'm surprised he hasn't been linked elsewhere. But actually, now you mention it, I've just had a couple thoughts in terms of defensive players that I think would fit under the category of underappreciated in the Premier League. Perhaps a couple West Brom players. I think Gareth McCauley and Johnny Evans.
Yeah,
I quite like.
Yeah,
at West Brom, I think both of them are capable of playing, for quite a few clubs in the league. So probably those two as well. But yeah, Winston Reid, love that.
Yeah,
I believe Winston Reid was linked to Arsenal not last summer, the summer prior to that.
He was
linked. And to add another West Brom player onto that pile, Matt Phillips.
Yeah.
This season has been absolutely superb. A guy that I didn't actually think would do that well in the Premier League. Saw him. I thought he had a little bit less about him than Tom Ince, but we've seen them go in very different paths.
Yeah, I'm putting my bias hat on. Sorry, but I have to. I think Alex Iwobi is going to be an absolute superstar in a few years. I really do. He's probably not underappreciated, but he maybe is underappreciated by Arsenal fans. I'll say that much. But I think when he's given the chance to play in that number 10 role in the future, and when he really sort of settles into the size of the club he's at, I think he's already shown flashes for me that he'll be an absolute superstar.
Hang on, I've got another one. Shinji Okazaki.
Oh, that's a great shout. Yeah, love that. That's a brilliant shout. Yeah, we could go on all night, couldn't we? But alas, we would literally be here all night, so we can't. But that's a great question. So very, very many thanks to James for that, because it is sorry, to Tom for that. It is one of those questions that someone just pulls out just for you back to record, and you go, God. So I'm quite glad I had a bit of time to think about it. Great question, Tom. Superb. And if you have a question for us, please do tweet us in. I know I often put the tweet out quite late when we're recording. So anybody got any questions? We try and ram them in quickly, but if you have got a question, it's a really burning issue, and it happens on a Saturday, just DM it to us on our Twitter account. We will pick it up in time for the podcast. We're not always on the account, of course, but we do check the inbox before we go live, as well as the tweets. So just ping them in, and we'll do our best to do it. Okay, right, that will do us for this week then. Many thanks for tuning in, if indeed you have. If you haven't, you won't be hearing me saying this, so it doesn't really matter. But we do appreciate the continued support from all of our listeners. Got some really good feedback on last week's show, in particular from one gentleman who I'm going to give a shout out on this podcast to. It's the man I can never pronounce his surname, so here goes again, Max Gryczałka. Every week. Anyway, Max, he was at Milan against Napoli in the flesh last night. It was a great game. He got a real cracker there, and he sent us a video of him in the stands pre-game with a build-up. Excellent stuff. Really appreciate that. And he gave us a very nice compliment as well, saying that he was listening to our resumption special and he loved it. So he said, more long pods, please. Well, you've got your wish tonight, Max. We've gone long. So there you go. Hopefully this gets you through Monday mornings, wherever you are. So many thanks to my guests. Thank you to James for coming back on again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Beginning to feel like a podcast veteran.
Oh, we'll have you back, don't worry. You'll be doing it every week before long, I guarantee it. That's how it always starts.
Hopefully.
And thanks as well to Josh.
Thank you very much, and I hope we have a good game of football during this week.
Yes, indeed. And of course to Ross as well. Thank you, Ross. Pleasure as ever. Right, we will be back, of course, this time next week, summing up or running down the FA Cup games that are in progress, as well as the few bits and bobs going on in the EFL as well. So do tune in for that. At the FH Podcast is where we live. Do check out Josh's blog on Pep versus Conte, or however you want to phrase it. It is very much worth a look. Enjoy that. Keep tweeting us your thoughts. Keep leaving those YouTube comments. Keep subscribing as well. The more people you tell, the more listeners we get, the more content we can give you. So keep it tuned. We appreciate you listening in, and we'll be back very soon.